Good morning and welcome to GKBA today, where we feature a Greater Kendall Business Association member each and every time. The Greater Kendall Business Association is known as the friendliest place to do business, and that's not just a motto, not because we say it, but that's what everybody tells us. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest today. His name is an esteemed member, of course, Chris Cooney from Affinity Management Services. How are you, Chris?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, Chris, I always like to say people do business with people, not with companies. So I'd like to know a little bit about you. Are you from this area originally? Tell me a little bit about that.
So, like a lot of South Floridians, I'm originally from New York City.
Okay.
And got smart and moved down to the palm trees.
You don't have the New York accent, though.
No.
Did you lose it? Did you have it at one time?
I've lived in the South, in the Carolinas, went to school in South Carolina, so Atlanta, then Florida. So,
where'd you go to school in South Carolina?
Clemson.
Oh, you went to
Tigers.
Clemson.
That's right.
All right.
But I lived in Miami Beach for 12 years, and then about 3 years ago, my wife and I moved down to the Keys. So I live in Tavernier.
So let's talk about that a second. What was that transition like? Very different places, although, you know, the water and all that, but what was it like?
So I get the best of both worlds.
Okay.
I come up to Miami 2-3 times a week for work or for social events. And then, but when you come over that causeway and go over the bridge and get to the Keys, it's like, it's a different pace of life. And I can feel myself slowing down. So we're really happy there.
So what are some of the things you do in the Keys recreationally?
We like to go snorkeling.
Okay.
We're about to get our first boat. So it's,
okay, cool.
So I'll be getting out on the water. My wife doesn't like to fish, but I do. And so I'll go offshore and get some dinner once in a while. But it's just, we like to go watch the sunset. My wife is an artist there too. So there's always something going on, some art exhibit or fair. And we go down to Key West quite a bit. So we enjoy it.
So, Chris, I have to admit I have a whole new appreciation for you. You make those breakfast meetings.
That's right.
At 7:30 in the morning, coming up from Tavernier. I just learned that. That's unbelievable. I really appreciate that.
It's worth it. What I do is I'll stack my day, so I have appointments after. When I make the trip up, I'm usually up for the whole day.
Okay.
So.
All right. So tell me a little bit about your career. Have you always been in, Affinity Management Services is all about managing properties, and we'll go more in
yes,
depth.
Very much a people business. I've been in sales longer than I can remember.
Okay.
I had a paper route growing up, much of my background is in selling technology, software, and services. And then I've been with Affinity Management for just over a year. And what we do is provide on-site management for homeowners associations, condominiums, and those types of neighborhoods. So we'll provide the manager, the administrative or maintenance staff, just depending on the needs of each community. And our company is very technology oriented, so my background really helps.
Okay. How can condominiums, HOAs, things like that, where are there unique differences and how do you address them? You know, what are quote unquote typical needs, or are there sometimes special needs that some may have? How do you assess those needs?
So it is a lot about the people, right? That it's really important that we connect and we call it align with our partners that we work to manage with. Our motto at Affinity is align, execute, and deliver. But the needs of each community, everybody strives to get better communication. You know, members want to know what's going on. If the board, if they hire professional management, it's important to communicate with them daily, weekly, provide status reports of things that are going on in the community. So there are a lot of ways that we can help foster that. But really, it's about establishing a culture that where people feel the value of what they're investing in their management and just their everyday resident experience. Okay,
speaking of culture, it seems like on Instagram the other day, and it was somewhere in Turnberry or something, I saw a guy a member, the president of the association, getting taken away in handcuffs. What type of things happen or can happen in these associations? It seems like there's always kind of turmoil.
So, and that's a great question. I appreciate that. So what I say, and I don't know anybody personally at Turnberry, I have not worked with them, but I did see the news of that, and of course you see the video of the gentleman being walked out of the lobby in handcuffs. Most of the board members I've met, 99+%, are good people trying to do the right thing, looking out for the best interests of their community and their home. But and the advice I give to association members is get involved to the level of knowing what's going on, knowing how your money is being invested, because there are that small percentage of bad actors, and those people thrive in environments of apathy. When I lived in South Beach, I was a board president of my small condo for a year, and that was a training by fire, if you will. But one of the biggest challenges we had was apathy. Nobody wanted to get involved. Let somebody else run for the board. It's not my problem. And because you're sharing these communities and their assets, it kind of is your problem, or at least you should know what's going on. Because, like I said, that example you gave earlier, a gentleman getting arrested, he's doing bad things and nobody's noticing until it's really too late.
You mentioned getting involved.
Mm-hmm.
What can a homeowner in this type of community, what can they do to get involved? I mean, do they have frequent meetings? How does that work?
Yes.
How can they look at the books, for example?
Yes. So depending on the size of the community, the regulations change a bit. But one of the new rules that they've set out as of last year's legislation was that condominiums that have now 25 units or more, beginning in January of next year, which is not that far away, they're required to have a website. And those websites have to be public-facing websites that have a password-protected resident area. And that's where there are documents that are required to be up there, like the financials, the bylaws of the association, bids for any major work, because that's an area where a lot of shady activity can happen. You're a board president, and here comes a contractor that wins basically a no-bid situation, and the deal's done before anybody really knows what's going on. So the rules dictate that you have to keep copies of not only the winning bid, but other competing bids if a job was above a certain amount.
Okay.
So get involved. You're allowed to attend most board meetings. So I know the legislator mandates that at least quarterly boards must meet now. They're required to post notice of when the meetings are, and members are invited to most of those meetings. They once in a while will have a closed session. They might be discussing litigation with the attorney or some type of staffing matter, and those meetings are generally closed to residents. But in other cases, residents can submit items to be discussed or just be there to know what's going on.
Now that you mentioned the numbers and you mentioned attorneys,
Mm-hmm.
who is typically, maybe not on the payroll, but consultants, et cetera, in a typical homeowners association or condominium association?
So typically, and one final thing I forgot to add about the website requirement, HOAs now, if you have 100 units or more, starting next January, are required to have this website that I mentioned for the condominiums. And for 3 years, I sold those services to communities. And when it's used properly, it's a great tool for communicating not only what's going on, but it allows easy access for residents to get on either through a mobile device or just on their computer at home and get whatever documents they might need. So when it's used effectively, it's a great tool for running day-to-day operations. And I'm sorry, the last question?
No, the last question was, who is typically on the payroll or who are typical contractors that an HOA typically employs?
Sure. Well, I'd say the first one you need is an association attorney. And there's quite a few of them here in South Florida. A lot of them do a really great job. So, and they're helpful for running things like the annual meeting, just making sure things are meeting statutory requirements. Plus, if the board has any questions on, hey, how do we do this or how do we plan for that, definitely you need an attorney for that. Even a management company, they will get asked opinions for that. But when it's a legal question, we really try to stay in our lane and say, hey, look, here's what we think, but you really need to check with your attorney for that, for guidance. If they don't have professional management, they'll need a CPA to do their books. Once in a while, you get a board member that is a CPA, and that's a win for the association that they can have that skill in-house. And then there'll be different contractors used for ongoing maintenance or landscaping, security, just depending on the needs of the community.
Okay. What happens when there's a big job to be done, such as maybe the community center needs a new roof.
Okay.
Do the homeowners have participation in that? Is it just the board that decides with the several bids? How does that work?
Sure. So for a major project like a new roof, these associations are typically saving money each year in reserve for those types of projects. New laws have required now that it's a lot harder now to pass the buck on planning for major maintenance, such as a new roof.
Okay.
So, for example, just using round numbers, a roof might have a life cycle of 10 years at a cost of $1 million. So they should be budgeting $100,000 each year. So there's a term that's being thrown out now about being fully funded for those major projects. So let's say if we're 2 years into that 10-year lifespan, then you should have $200,000 to be considered fully funded, so in a reserve account. So starting with a reserve, if they're short of the money needed to do the repair, and maybe they have a natural disaster that maybe shortens the lifespan of that roof, then they can either borrow money or they'll raise what's called a special assessment, where they just pass the hat among the members and collect the money for that way.
What happens if somebody says, look, I'm sorry, I don't have the money?
So there are, that again gets back to the legal question.
Okay.
But members are expected to pay to find somehow, some way. I know Miami-Dade County has loan programs.
Right.
So that there are different avenues available, and even the attorneys can help guide on where to find that.
So is it a requirement to be self-funded for these types of projects, or it's just a recommendation?
So as of last year, the legislation dictates that 2025, so the budget people just wrote at the end of 2024 and adopted, was the last time they could defer being fully funded. So next year's budget, they're expected to be fully funded. Now that applies to certain communities, high rises within, let's say, 3 miles of the ocean. But it's good practice for, even if you're in the HOA in Kendall, let's say, it's good practice to make sure that you're funding those major expenses, because you will have to plan for those. And it's a bad situation if you need to do those repairs and you don't have the money.
Okay. In the literature you sent me, I saw, I think it was it pets, people, and property, was it? Pets, people?
Pets, people, and parking.
And parking,
So,
pets, people,
right.
and parking.
So
tell us about that a little bit.
in a lot of communities, a lot of communities are concerned with violations and just enforcing the standards that they've all agreed on, right? So people are, before I bought my house, we lived in a condominium in Key Largo, and there was a rule that you weren't supposed to have more than 2 pets in the community. And here comes the former board president walking 4 dogs. And the current board president had 5 vehicles parked on the property when you're supposed to only have 2. And they have professional management. So that's a real challenge of making sure that you're fair and consistent in enforcing rules, and if you adopt violations, doing that consistently as well. Because in that community where I lived, it was very much a buddy or insider type of clique.
Yeah.
Different rules, and that could even get an association in some legal trouble if somebody gets unfairly or what they perceive to be unfairly enforced while others are let to walk by.
So here you are trying to park your smart car, and there's 5 cars there.
Sure.
What can somebody do? So
usually, I would say you have to start with the governing documents of the community. It usually has some definitions about each unit as assigned X number of parking spaces. So one of the big challenges in all of these communities, especially when you have tenants, is that vehicles are come and going, and residents may not be diligent about keeping their vehicle registration information. Hey, I used to have a Toyota, now I have a Nissan, and here's the new information. So whether it's the management or the board, or maybe they hire a contractor security, somebody will eventually go around checking, and when they see a car that's parked there, what are they supposed to do? So, in most cases, somebody may have just forgotten, I had a guest, and here's the information. So it may be that, it may be a short-term rental situation. And again, that may or may not be permitted in that community, just depending on how the rules are set up there. So it's important to try to manage that. And then, of course, where you were talking about pets earlier, it's
right.
you want to be considerate of your neighbors. And like I said, the lady with the 4 dogs, they were not always quiet, and it's a difficult type of situation.
Okay. And the people part of it?
People, it's good to keep people informed. A lot of times when communities have trouble with violations, they may not have the board may not have done a good job of reminding people what the rules are. So a lot of times when, for example, last year we had a community that was self-managed bring us in. And when we started, that was one of their challenges. And what we did is just send out reminders, friendly, hey, we're the new management, we're Affinity, here's how to reach us. And by the way, here are some of the standards, because in that particular community, a lot of people's fences were in disrepair. So the board wanted to make sure everybody knew what materials were allowed, what colors, and just to help. When you spruce that up, it's a win for the community.
Sure.
It looks a lot better. People feel better about, have a little more pride in their community. It's also a win for us because it helps a measurable impact of, hey, these guys came in and they really took over and did some good things.
What is Affinity's, because you talked about several types of properties that you may manage. What is your sweet spot, so to speak? Or do you have one?
Yes. I would say 80% of our clients are HOAs. Some of those may be gated communities, but sometimes they're single-family homes or they might be attached buildings, but HOAs with 400 units or more that need on-site help. I get calls from smaller communities that don't need somebody on site, and maybe maybe only 50 or 100 units. In our business, we call that portfolio management, and that's not something that we really do, but I'm happy to refer that to other companies that we know.
So what's involved? So you have somebody on the property?
Yes.
And what type of team manages the whole association of 400 plus?
Yes, often there's at least one manager. Let's say a manager, administrative assistant. There might be an assistant manager, and the managers are licensed with a community association manager license, or CAM as they call it. Usually there's some type of maintenance component. So there might be a head groundskeeper or maintenance supervisor, and then staff members, depending on the size of the community and the needs. Some communities have housekeeping services. Definitely you see that in condominiums.
Interesting.
And then there may be some communities have recreation attendants to help people with the pool or the gym. So every community is just a little bit different. And, we'll staff that. Communities often have private security, and that's not something that we're licensed to do, but we're happy to work with them, and we know many of those companies here in town.
So is it fair to say that you guys are basically turnkey, right, except for the security component?
Well, so that's true, but in addition to that, we also provide back office support. So we have full-time HR, we have a CPA on staff, so that's our Director of Association Accounting, and so it is turnkey from that aspect. And if you look up Affinity's Google reviews, we rate usually 4.7 or higher, which is as high or higher than anyone in our space. And a lot of that has to do with our client care team, where if a homeowner is struggling to access the website, hey, I want to know my balance, where do I send my payment? They can call or even walk into our office in Doral, and our team takes care of that. The funny thing about the Google rating thing is that nobody is calling that team when things are going great. There's usually some type of problem.
Sure.
Hey, why did my assessment go up? Or I can't get into the stupid website to help me. And our team is really dedicated, and they're able to turn that around. Almost all of that team is bilingual, so we're sensitive to the market here and the needs there. The same applies for our on-site staff. We make sure that we put the residents can feel comfortable connecting with our team.
What is the ROI for hiring Affinity? Because ROI either is going to make you money or save you money. That's where I'm coming from.
Absolutely.
What is the advantages of hiring Affinity to instead of hiring somebody yourself?
Sure. Well, and it's a couple of reasons there, but it's easy. There's a low barrier of entry to get into the community management business, so it's hard for a board to select. You don't know who you're getting in a lot of cases, but we'll get calls from people that either are self-managed, and it's really tough to be a board member now because of all the fiduciary requirements and just the day-to-day, the work that it takes. Some board members work 20 hours a week on their community in addition to having a full-time job. So very difficult. But we'll get calls from either self-managed that is needing help, or they might be with another management company and they're not getting the results they want to see. But so our motto that we really try to align with the board, and just we want to understand what their vision of success is for the next 12, 18, 24 months. What does that look like? And we don't want to sign just anybody just for the sake of adding a new client. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure we're in a partnership with them. And we want them to be a board of directors, not necessarily managers. That's where we come in. But so align and then execute is just making sure we have regular check-ins monthly and quarterly, just to sit down and say, hey, at the beginning of our engagement, you said you needed to do X, Y, and Z. Where are we? Are we on track? Are we off track? And if we are, let's, how do we get back? And then deliver is we put some skin in the game where we offer guarantees to bet on our own performance. We have what we call our 3 uniques. Mm-hmm. So one of those is delivering financial statements on time.
Okay.
So
how often are these organizations required to submit financials? I guess it would be, is it to the state? Is it to...
Yes. So they are corporations, so they have to file a tax return and an annual report. We will deliver to them monthly financial statements, because it's really important to know as you're going where the money's being spent.
Sure.
And if you have money budgeted for projects and you have ongoing maintenance, you need to know if you're on track or not, or if there are variances that need to be addressed. But with us, we will guarantee, if you're a board president and we agree to work together, then we're going to guarantee, hey, you will have your financial statements by X date, maybe the 20th of every month. So here it is January, almost January 20th. You would have December's reports by that date, or we would pay a penalty for that.
Okay, so that's the skin in the game.
It's a big challenge in the industry. So a lot of times, and it doesn't matter the size of the management company they might already have or the size of the community, it's a common complaint that I hear from board members where they get the financial statements very late, or they might not be very accurate. So we pride ourselves on delivering audit-ready financials when we say we're going to do that. Another challenge is that if they have professional management, they might not see any support from the home office. They throw a manager out on site and good luck, literally on an island, or figuratively, if that is. But we believe it's important that the on-site team gets support from corporate. So we promise that the board will see their regional director, and that's, I think, critical to maintaining continuity. So people get sick and have to take leave of absence, or they leave to move out of town. If that manager is the only one that knows what's going on, there's a void there.
Sure.
So we want to make sure that our team back at the office is aware of what's going on, and also we hold our managers accountable to making sure that they're operating according to the KPIs that we've promised to the board.
Okay.
That might be they're expected to open a certain number of work orders per week, and that comes from the manager walking the property, right? So if you're in a really large community and you only open 2 or 3 work orders, what's that about?
What explain that process a little bit about work orders, what they're about.
Yes. So things always happen in the communities. There's a light out by the pool or the tennis court. Something needs to be painted, and these are the things that you see when you're eyes and ears and feet on the ground. So we document all of that stuff to make sure that we can measure when it's closed and report our progress back to the board.
So who makes those requests? Homeowners? Is it the manager says, hey, I just saw this, or both?
Really,
okay.
Yeah. And they're welcome to tell us, and of course everybody has a smartphone now. So if you do go out to the pool and you see the light out, send that. But we're going to document it, because what we don't want to have is the same person that reported that 2 weeks ago saying, "Hey, where's the follow up?" So we make sure that we do that. One thing that we do when we start with the community is we'll do a very thorough inspection of that community and document all of their assets. So like a pool pump or a water fountain or an elevator, let's say. So that we want to inventory those. We put in the serial number, the life expectancy of those assets. And then when we create work orders, we're associating those with those assets. So as a board, we can present real data to them about, hey, we've had a lot of repairs on this elevator over here. Maybe it's time to upgrade or replace instead of having to constantly repair.
Okay. From a practical point of view, and I'm curious to see how or who handles this. I used to have a roofing contractor as a client, and one of the challenges was getting the tile or the shingle or whatever material was being used approved.
Sure.
Who does that? Would that be you? Would that be somebody on the board? How does that work if you're involved?
So, and we work at the pleasure of the board. So
Okay.
usually within the governing documents, there are standards of what types of materials and colors need to be
Right.
used in the community. It's a little easier if you're re-roofing the clubhouse, let's say, because it's
common
not
area.
somebody's
Yeah.
house. But for a unit owner that maybe wants to do some work at their home, it's important that they follow the accepted standards there. So our job as managers is to make sure that people know what the standards are. And that's something you could put on your website.
Right. And I was speaking of the approval process.
Okay.
Do you guys approve? Do they present, the roofing company present the material to you, or is it presented to the board?
Well, so a roof, usually an association, is a common asset, right? If you own a unit, you're typically the walls inside
Right.
of the unit. So that's an easier scenario. But if most communities will have what they call a architectural committee. So if
Okay.
a homeowner wants to add a deck or do some kind of remodel, they're going to submit, and the documents are usually listed out on the requirements. So you got to have a engineer drawing or architect. Here's the plans. Here's the project plan, and submit that for approval. Some boards do that directly. A lot of communities do that through a committee.
Okay.
And we will participate and support that, but that's usually driven within the community.
To me, awareness on the part of homeowners in associations seems critically important. As far as what you just mentioned, the standards. I mean, I've heard countless cases. I have a friend who I think he built a deck, and then they said, and he had to take down the deck. How do you guys help in building that awareness? You did mention that you send out, I guess, really almost from the get-go, a letter or an email saying, hey, remember kind of these things?
Yes. And that's so when we start in a new community, we'll build that website, and there's usually a section in there that dictates or that addresses the standards for the paint colors, fencing materials. Somebody may put up a fence that's this exotic metal that's not approved, or when
Right.
you're supposed to use vinyl or wood or something. So just to help to alleviate any misunderstandings that come down the road.
Okay. So switching gears, you are obviously a member of the Greater Kendall Business Association, and what's your experience been thus far?
So I felt very welcomed. I joined late last year, and I get value out of attending the breakfast meetings and the lunches. The featured speakers are usually very on point, and I walk away learning something new every time. But it's like you said earlier, it's a people business, so it's we're happy to participate in Kendall. We have quite a few clients there, so it's in a market that we pay attention to, and I look forward to learning more and meeting more of the people there.
Excellent. No, and I thank you very much for coming up from the Keys. I didn't know that till today. If somebody wants to get in touch with Affinity, with you, what's the best way to do it?
So I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, but our website is managedbyaffinity.com, and I'm sure we can post a link for my contact info here with the video. But
Sure.
Like I said, I handle all of Miami-Dade and the Keys. We also have a rep up north in Palm Beach area, and soon one over on the Gulf side. So our focus is on South Florida, and we've been in this market for almost 20 years.
Okay. Just so everybody knows, we have a luncheon coming up on the 23rd, and it's going to be at the Palace. If you have not had lunch at the Palace,
I'm looking forward to it.
It is really good food, and the venue is just beautiful. And if you want to join the Greater Kendall Business Association, first of all, we'd love for you to come to our events. We have 3 events a month. You can just drop us a line on our website forms, or you can email info@greaterkendall.com. So, Chris, thank you for being here. It's been
My pleasure.
It's been a really great learning experience for me. I have never been a member of an HOA, so really eye-opening. And once again, thanks for being a member. And thank you for being here with us on GKBA today. We look forward to seeing you again. And of course, always thanks to Community News for this platform. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.